Welcome to Tournament Centre, and in this piece we're going to talk about new extended. Let's have a look at the sets that make up this new extended format. We begin Time Spiral, Planar Chaos and Future Sight. Tarmogoyfs all over the place, we think. The next year of cards, Lorwyn and Morningtide went together. The second pair, Shadowmoor and Eventide. Are we going to see Bitter Blossoms? I think we probably are. On a year, Shards of Alara, Conflux, Alara Reborn. This could be all about Cascade. Will Jund have a big part to play in Amsterdam? And then we get Zendikar, Worldwake, Rise of the Eldrazi. Emrakul the Eons Torn? Who knows? What about the core sets? We have 10th edition, M10 and M11, the 2011 core set. Now, two cards to tell you about. Sword of the Meek, Hypergenesis. They are gone from the format. They are banned. But the big question is, what is going to define new extended? BDM, it's over to you.
All right, thanks, Rich. So I'm here in the days leading up to Pro Tour-Amsterdam. I'm here with Wizards of the Coast R&D developer Zac Hill, Pro Tour Honolulu top 8 finisher Conley Woods, and Magic Hall of Famer Frank Karsten. Frank, tell us a little bit about where we are for this event first, where we're filming this. This is a pretty important spot in Dutch Magic history, right?
Yes, this is Café Twee Klaveren.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, basically this is the place where Magic is being played in Amsterdam. There's the weekly draft on Monday night, and also many PTQs or pre-releases, complete trials are played in here. So it's an important location for the Netherlands as far as Magic concerned.
Right, and when you talk to the players in the Dutch Magic community, I mean, it goes back like a decade and a half in terms of people playing Magic here, right? I mean, you have like Julian Naughton doing his first drafts here, and Wessel Omens doing his first drafts here, and Noah Boken doing his first draft. Like, it just keeps going back generation after generation after generation of Dutch Magic players.
Yeah, indeed. When I just started playing, which was the previous century, more than 10 years ago already, this cafe was already here and was already being used to play Magic in, so yeah.
It was pretty cool. As we walked in, there's a giant poster of Jay Stewart.
Yeah, I saw it.
He was so excited.
I couldn't believe it, and I didn't realize this was the place. I'm like, look, that cafe has a big Jace on it. I was like, okay, oh, yes. I put two and two together. You know, it took me a little bit, but.
So we're here to talk about the new extended format. Extended has undergone some pretty significant changes since the last time it's been played at a large event. Zac, can you talk a little bit about what those changes are, and a little bit about why those changes were made?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we found about Extended was that competitive players really enjoyed it. The problem was that no one else was playing it. Outside of any sort of PTQ format or Pro Tour, extended events just rarely fired. So we tried to figure out, okay, well, why is that? And one of the, we had a lot of theories, a lot of reasons why that might be, but one of it is, sort of card availability and coherence. It's like, okay, well, none of the, if you have cards that have been outside of Standard for 5 years, at that point, rather than invest something that's going to rotate again, we figured a lot of people might just sort of opt into Legacy. And we love Legacy, but Legacy has a pretty high barrier to entry. So we wanted to create a format where, like, if you had a Standard deck that you liked, and let's say it rotated out, well, there's another format you could play with only having to get like one set worth of cards. While at the same time offering a different variety of gameplay than, the standard environment that you might be used to. So we decided to sort of engineer this format to be a bigger, an easier sort of bridge between Standard and Legacy.
So now, before we get to what these guys are doing going forward, I'm going to ask you to reveal the sealed envelope. Let's see, what were the decks you guys saw and you thought would be the decks people would be playing this week?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, the first two were clearly the ones we banned, right? Because those just sort of came out of the gates and were very effective. A bunch of various Grove of the Burnwillows, Punishing Fire decks. Frequently sort of crafted around a Escape Shift Shell. The deck was a little bit worse without the Ravnica dual lands from the previous season, but it was a real deck and it was very good. We had, of course, Ad Nauseam combo, quickly the Angel's Grace thing, which wasn't terrible, before. It was something on people's minds, but wasn't quite there. It's a little bit better now, especially since a lot of your mana fixing sort of fits nicely into the 6 mana slot for Ad Nauseam Angel's Grace. We had, Fairies was a deck that everyone sort of tried to build. It was fine. Of course, it's very hard to control all these sort of diverse decks. So it wound up being a little bit worse than we thought, but it was a pretty good deck. And variants of mono red, turns out Lightning Bolt and Goblin Guide are very good burn cards, shockingly enough. So we had sort of those type of things. So it wound up being, mono red was one of the best aggro decks we could put together. Fairies was a sort of okay control deck, although it was hard to accommodate the format. And then a variety of different combo decks that were sort of, doing different things. The other Cascade cards, Living In and Restore Balance. They may not be as straightforward as Hypergenesis make a lot of dudes, but they are very powerful.
Right. So can you grade his Future League metagame, Frank?
I think it's a reasonable guess. At least it kind of corresponds to what I was guessing at first when I started playing the format. And I think that we will see many other decks tomorrow. I think there's so many possible deck archetypes that we will see. But the ones you mentioned will definitely be played, and are all decks that I could understand people playing. They're fine choices. So yeah, well.
For a deck builder, this is the Wild West, right? I mean, this is the Wild West. Like, anything can happen tomorrow. Like, there's no established metagame for this because there hasn't really been a major tournament for it. You said before when we were doing a little pregame, like you felt like there might be 20 or 30 decks that you would feel comfortable. If someone like, here, Frank, you have to play this. Like you showed up a minute before the tournament and you were like, I need to play. There's 20 or 30 decks someone could hand you and you would feel comfortable playing.
Yeah, well, basically for every deck there will be a certain meta game that it will be good and worse in. But for every deck there is some meta game in which it is a fine choice. I guess it kind of depends on what you're expecting other people to do, but indeed.
Conley, when you first saw the new extended format, what was the first deck that popped to your mind? Like, what was the first thought you had when you saw the new format?
I mean, I love me a makeshift mannequin. That was the first thing. That was the first thing that came up. It was the makeshift mannequin decks. I explored every, the big reanimator style ones with like Fauna Shaman and whatnot. The value ones with the evoke creatures that saw playback and extended. I comboed it with Mystical Teachings and Mystical Teachings makeshift mannequin deck. But I was really looking at like the 4-mana engines because that's what this format's really about. It's like all these 4-mana engines: Mystical Teachings, Blood Red Elves, Jaces, like all these 4-mana cards that kind of, it's actually a little awkward because you don't want 16 4-mana. Like it's really easy to throw Cryptic Command next to Blood Red Elf, next to Jace, next to Mystical Teachings, and then you go, well, where's the rest of my deck? But it really was about like the engines because the decks we didn't know about the decks, we knew about what different engines could go into different decks. So like you knew that there could be a Swath Storm deck, or Living In was like one possibility, Scape Shift's another, like these like small combinations of cards that go, then you have to build a deck around them, and those ones were all kind of apparent because you've all played with them before, whether like back in previous standard with like 5-color control mana bases and vivid lands and whatnot. You knew about that. You knew Reflecting Pool was going to be a huge card in the metagame. Just tribal synergies out of Lorwyn. Like you knew what like the pieces you had to work with. It was just combining them the correct ways because you didn't want to just build the same old decks. Like here's elves. Like combo elves is another example. Like you knew like Regal Forces Summoner's Pact is a good combo, but you don't want to just like build the old standard version and hope it works out. You got to mess with some stuff. So
it's kind of like a standard All-Star game this weekend.
Kind of. I mean, there's definitely more interactions than any of the previous standards. Like, you're going to have cards in decks that you couldn't imagine before. Like, everyone's talking about, like the classic scenario would be, like, Tarmogoyf and Jund. Like, Tarmogoyf's not as insane in this format as he has been in every other format ever. This is probably the worst format Tarmogoyf's ever been in. But still, like, he's still a pretty good 2-drop sitting next to Future Leech out of, like, a Jund deck or whatever. So, like, there are definitely huge upgrades to previous decks. But at the same time, a lot of those old decks will still emerge. And, like, you still want to play with your, Seismic Assault and your Swans and Bernardo or whatever. So
it's not just double standard though. There are lots of Time Spiral block cards that have never seen standard play together with, say, a Zendikar block cards or Alara block cards. So this is actually the first standard we get to see them together in a format that's smaller than the old extended. So that allows combos like Living End, for example, which you've never seen in standard because these cards have never been around together in standard.
What are the cards that get to play together, for example, that let you do that?
Well, also, for example, Fauna Shaman together with, let's say, Makeshift Mannequin or Demigod of Revenge or
Rebel Arc. Fauna Shaman Rebel Arc seems pretty disgusting to me, right?
Frank mentioned Zach Conley's like, this is a good deck.
we definitely explored the Revelark Fauna Shaman decks, and they're good, but they're definitely
Discard body double, go get Revelark.
Yeah, you have to have your Immunity body double thing in there. They're good, but like you're saying, there's like all kinds of. I mean, you combine like a card like that I love that may or may not be playing tomorrow. Probably not, but I love it. Like Mishra, Artificial Prodigy. Like I love that card, but like you combine it with like the Border Post and whatnot out of Alara, and you end up with like this way better mana base. Like you can use the Time Seep combo in there if you want with Open the Vaults. There's all kinds of just possibilities of like these more niche cards from Time Spiral that didn't really have homes just because the cards weren't there for it to be built around.
So let me just back up for. So you're saying Mishra's Artificer's Prodigy is a possibility for you tomorrow?
It is. I love that card.
We did not see that. I'll go ahead and put that out
4
there.
and 4/4 with value. Like you just draw cards. Good with Chromatic Stars. Good with all the Elsewhere Flasks and stuff. You can actually just literally slot time the.
So you have that all like sort of drawn up and ready to go.
Yeah, I have a Mishra aggro deck with like Lurebound Scarecrows.
Lurebound Scarecrow. This is not unlimited.
Esper Stormblades and all that. I have it all. Like it's definitely the lower. It's not like top 5 or anything like that. But that's a card where like when you played it back in Time Spiral, and it's all playback Time Spiral block. But like you basically just played it with like your Chromatic Stars and your Apocryphites. That was it. Like it was just a small engine to go in your deck, and you ran it with Core Lash and all that whatnot. But then there's cards like Core Lash who have gotten significantly weaker since they last saw play. Like, I mean, there's no Dimir House card or anything like that to kind of like, make them good. And plus, you can't really run that many swamps in your deck, so you're like, you maybe run 4 swamps, so like the 3rd Core Lash is dead or whatever. So there are definitely some cards that have gotten significantly weaker from their last times in Standard. So.
Well, I think that's kind of interesting. Just a way to segue into different approaches to attacking a format, and I think you guys are really on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as deck builders go, right? Like, Frank, you're pretty methodical. You like to take a very statistical approach. You really like to tune a deck almost more than build a deck, right?
Yeah, actually, I do. I like picking mana bases and sideboard plans, optimizing mana curves, etc. But yeah, I also like to have lots of data to back up my decisions.
Yeah, I always picture you like in a pith helmet, in a spreadsheet, looking for the best deck.
Yeah, well, actually, that is how I selected my deck in many previous Pro Tours. Basically, when the amount of strategies is quite limited, and you can basically specify, there are like 4 different decks, and that's all there will be at this tournament. Then I just tune those versions, play them against each other lots of times, and just figure out which deck has the best matchup percentage against an expected meta game. But for this format, there is so many decks. This approach, is never going to work since you cannot test out the meta game. So basically, what I try to do is, you can have basically 2 approaches to building new decks. Either you can go for like a really answer-laden reactive control strategy, where you try to pinpoint the weaknesses of all the decks in the meta game and then build your deck around that. But I found that just too difficult for this format because I just have no clue what to expect tomorrow. So I don't know what cards to put in my deck. I think it was Crispy Kula who said there are no wrong threats, but there are wrong answers. At least that is a good one. So I try to just build a deck with lots of good threats, basically my own proactive game plan with good synergy that just does something unique and tries to kill the opponent as soon as possible, and not try to worry all that much about is there going to be fades, is there going to be punishing fire, should I worry about graveyards or combos or red decks or blah 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 blah. So that's basically the approach I took. After testing a bit, I just tried to look for the best proactive, synergetic, fast deck.
So, but you have been going through like the mid-go events and different online events and looking at those results?
Yeah, when I look at the Magic Online events, for example, I also see a pretty diverse metagame. The most popular decks are Fairies and Red Green Scapeshift with Punishing Fire, and then a whole bunch of other decks, really a lot of other decks. That helped shape me my initial gauntlet a bit and get some expectations of the meta game. Sometimes I saw a deck on Magic Online and I thought, hey, that was pretty rare.
Right.
But it's helpful to get at least some initial grasp of what people may be doing.
It's interesting. Grove of the Burn Willows, Punishing Fires are a combination people are talking about a lot. We saw it in Pro Tour-Amsterdam,
Right.
Where it kind of debuted in the zoo decks. But everyone seems to be trying to work with this combination. People seem to be trying to put those two cards into pretty much every deck.
It's just so easy to slot in though. It's the thing. It's like you have these 4 lands that don't hurt you in any way for playing them. Really, like worst case scenario, they're a colorless land. Probably tap for one of the colors in your deck at least. And then you have this 2 mana like card advantage card that there's 0 matchups where it's bad and you never draw it and you're like, oh, like even against like a control deck you're just trying to kill them with it, or against the aggro decks you're trying to kill their creatures with it, and like it's just so easy to throw into any deck that it's the opportunity cost is very low. Like you basically, there's like, you don't need to play Lightning Bolt in this format because you have Punishing Fire. Like that's the way it works. Like there are a lot of decks that will run no Lightning Bolts and 4 Punishing Fires. That's how good the combo is. So
Now, is that sort of strategy going to really make the aggro, like the creature strategies, obsolete for this event? Like, does it just sort of make them irrelevant?
not really. Like it is a slow combo to set up. Like I mean, if somebody plays like a Doran on you, you're not going to be Punishing Firing that out anytime soon. So like the creature decks just really have to capitalize on their 3 toughness and larger creatures, or like cards like Meddling Mage or Declaration of Naught. Declaration of Naught's actually a very good card in this format just because of Punishing Fire in the various combo decks. So, I mean, if you're going like Future Leech on turn 2, or even like a 2/3 Tarmogoyf, just something that doesn't die immediately to the Punishing Fire, then they can get really far behind if they don't have some type of Wrath effect or something like that. So Punishing Fire is really good for like, okay, I'm out of cards now, I need to stabilize, I have this combo in my graveyard that comes back, but you really need other answers to like stop the first, line of attackers or whatever, otherwise you're just going to fall too far behind.
To me, it definitely seemed like Punishing Fire Grove is a format-defining combo, but it's something that you can also prepare around fairly straightforward. I mean, like Conley said, play 3 toughness guys. And so, I mean, I definitely think that one of the things I would be looking at where I actually play this format is like, okay, well, what's the best aggro deck I can make that's not vulnerable to this particular combination? Or is there a way to hate the graveyard without, being very high opportunity cost or having good splash damage against other decks? It's where I can say, okay, well, you're relying upon this for your creature control, and I'm just going to get you.
We're talking about Frank's approach to a metagame. Your approach is, you have a reputation as something of a rogue when it comes to building decks.
Guilty.
No.
Yeah. But that also sort of is somewhat predicated on an established metagame, right?
Yeah.
You want to shoot the angles of an existing metagame to be able to bring this unusual looking deck to the format.
There are kind of like 2 phases to my building. Like the first phase is like find that combination of cards that nobody's willing to look at yet. Like the crazier cards that look really bad, but when paired with X, they turn out to be good. The problem with that approach is that with like Magic Online and other large tournaments happening all the time, is that there are very few combinations of cards that people haven't discovered yet. So like when you do walk by one of those, it's awesome, but like you can't spend too much time just digging and digging and digging. So very quickly you realize once you've kind of looked over the entire card list for whatever format you're in this case extended, you go, okay, I found very few things that are like exciting on their own and whatnot. Then you have to move to like stage 2, which is answering what you expect the metagame to be. And I'm pretty good at finding like cards that people don't play with that are good answers, like things like Even Mind Sensor, just cards that like people just generally have off their radar but are actually pretty good answer cards. But the problem with this format is that we don't know what people are going to be playing, so it's really hard to like pick those really niche answer cards that pull from Eternities and whatnot. So you kind of have to almost rely on the stage 1 part and make something work. Like you really want to have a deck that's proactive but also has some reactive stuff within it, but more generic reactive cards. Like Cryptic Command's a really good reactive generic card that everyone's going to be happy about, but like Mystical Teachings decks, you find really quickly that like sure you could main deck like an Extirpate or whatnot, but in a lot of matchups it's like doesn't do much, or like you can't get their Punishing Fire. I don't know if anyone knows, but Extirpate's pretty bad at getting Punishing Fire. It seems like it'd be the ideal card, like one card and one card. It's pretty bad at it.
And that's because Grove of the Burn Willows.
Yeah, it's a triggered ability, so. But yeah, you have to really keep your mind open and pick these generic answers that are still very powerful, but you don't want like for instance we had Fairy Macabre in our sideboards of a lot of our decks.
In your
and, like,
fairies deck?
So you can cast it and attack.
Fairy Macabre's like a card that's like really good against Revel Arc and is okay against Punishing Fire, but it's really bad against Living End because they have 10 guys in their yard, 8 guys and whatnot. So you really you can't even really look at Fairy Macabre unless you have some way to tutor it up as like a 1-up or something. You can't really look at a card like that because it's not generic enough while still being a card that's against niche archetypes. So you really have to look at stuff like Relic of Genesis or Cormon's Crypt or these sweeping effects. Other answers like Volcanic Fallout, for instance, it is good against fairies, but it's all the aggro decks are going to be running 3 toughness guys anyway, so then you have to go, well, do I want to one Wrath of God in my 5-color control list or not? But that's bad against fairies, so it's really tough because you have to pick your poisons, and it's such a diverse format that, like I said, it's almost better just to pick your combination of cards, try to attack the opponent, and then if they have an answer back, then have a plan B that's reactive.
Fairies is a deck that people don't seem to be talking about as much. When the format was announced, the forums were ablaze with OMG fairies. Is that going to be what percentage of the field this week?
Well, one thing I'm sort of interested in about fairies, and I think it's weird because it's this blue-black control deck with a ton of card advantage, but at some point it sort of needs to kill you with proper fairies, and I think Punishing Fire Grove is sort of a limiting factor on that. But at the same time, I mean, maybe not. But
this looks like someone who might be playing a better class than this weekend.
But I'm just interested to see. I think in Berlin, one of the things we always talked about was it's hard to play a control deck because there's so many different things to control. And we've sort of said that. And but Nassif showed up with the Riptide Lab tech, and sort of figured out how to control the format. So I guess I'm interested in seeing if anyone figures out how to do that based on Frank's reaction. He might have in fact found a way to do that. But.
Well, I do think that if you build a good fairy deck, then it's certainly possible to not really beat the Punishing Fire decks, but at least to go 45% or 50% against it. But you need to have certain specific cards in that I actually have never seen in live versions. So we may still see some fairy tech tomorrow. The thing I like about fairies actually is that it is still pretty much proactive, just makes its own guys. However, it has very generic reactive cards, like you said. But fairies has things like Thoughtseize, Vendilion Clique, just counter spells, each of which answer a whole variety of combo decks or control strategies. And you don't have to go really specific with stuff like, let's say, Torbot Script or something like that. I'm still expecting some fairy decks tomorrow, but I do think that many people will not dare to touch it. If you don't have enough experience with the fairy deck, don't have a good version, then I would not really recommend it, to be honest. But it's still a really powerful synergetic strategy by itself that still has all kinds of generic answers. So.
It's funny, at Nationals a couple weeks ago in the lobby, every night in the hotel lobby, normally everyone's like draft, cube, whatever. And it was so funny because everyone was running around going, extended? Anyone want to play extended? Because people are just looking to get in as many maps as possible and really see as many other people's decks. People are usually so much more secretive, but people just wanted to see as many decks as possible. So I'm really excited that we're actually going to get to finally see these decks tomorrow. Any predictions for top 8? In terms of decks?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we have two of our top 8 players right here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Cascade Control, or not, Cascade Combo tends to be very underrated right now. I really liked Hypergenesis last extended season, or the last time you could play it, because people do adorable things, and you're like, you're dead. So I think there's going to be a couple of those. I would say actually a Mono Red or a Goblins deck. I think also for similar reasons actually. Everyone's kind of trying to do adorable things and next level everybody else. Meanwhile, someone is just going to be like, you're dead. And Goblin Guide, Hellspark Elemental, and sorry, have fun. So I think those decks are going to do well. I think we're going to see either a fairy strategy or another kind of control deck from the Nassif type player that sort of figures everything out. 1 or 2 mid-range decks. I mean, Fauna Shaman is too powerful, I think, to sort of not make an appearance. And then hopefully something I haven't even thought of. We didn't have Ascension until it became a standard deck, and then it's this deck's probably way more insane than a format with more cards. So something like that. I mean, just a sort of different axis combo.
You get to put Grove of the Burn Willows, Punishing Fire into Pyromancer's Ascension, and that seems really good, right? You could just turn Pyromancer's Ascension on with two Punishing Fires. Yeah, that seems awesome.
I'm sure there will be many decks tomorrow that I've just never seen before. I mean, already when I look at the Magic Online tournaments, once in a while I'll see like a new deck, and there's like I know about like Hive Mind combo with Pact. I know about Pestle Might with Splinter Twin, and someone put it together in one deck. Like if I would see that tomorrow, then I just would have no clue what to expect. Good cards is good, but a good mana base is also important. Like this being blue deck, I just put it in my testing gauntlet. I guess, but I do put a lot of emphasis on like making correct mana bases and like making the good cycle plans and so on. Little tweaks, but like for this red green blue deck, this I put this in my testing gauntlet right at the beginning, but I noticed this deck is trying to suspend Ancestral Visions on turn 1, and then go for Kitchen Finks on turn 3, then play again Cryptic Command on turn 4, and then still have enough red mana to go for a Punishing Fire combo, and that just never worked out. But in this format, making the mana bases correctly, especially when you want to do all these things in various colors, is so difficult, especially since you have so many options. You can fetch land, or the Shadowmoor jewels, or maybe some man lands and some basics, and well, everything has some advantages and disadvantages, and making it correctly takes quite some work indeed.
Well, and like Conley said too, you don't just want to get like blown out by a single tectonic edge or something like that, where you're just like, okay, well, this all worked perfectly, and now my Raging Ravine died, and now I'm sitting here, you know. So I mean, that seems important too, to be able to withstand some disruption.
Excellent. Well, I mean, thank you guys. I think this was awesome. Looking forward to seeing what you guys actually play tomorrow. I'm really pulling for you and for Mishra. For Zac Hill, Frank Karsten, Conley Woods, this is Brian David Marshall, sending it back to Rich Hagon at the Tournament Center.
So what is the shape of New Extended? Check in at the Tournament Center all weekend to find out.